Hello, and welcome to the Aging and Long-Term Services Department 2025 Capital Outlay Application Presentation. My name is Rebecca Martinez. I'm a contractor for ALTSD, and with me today is Consuelo Holtridge Montoya, Capital Outlay Financial Administrator. Today we'll be talking about the Capital Outlay Grant Application and its purpose, allowable project categories, preparation for submitting applications, the application components and required forms, the application timeline and the database, and we'll also be talking about the 2024 capital outlay recommendation that was just approved by the 2024 New Mexico State Legislature. ALTSD will only consider proposed projects that rise to a critical status to address an urgent need or emergency situation that immediately endangers occupants of the premises or creates a serious threat to the health and or safety of citizens. This includes situations in which immediate action is necessary, a situation that would disrupt a senior center from operating, or failure is imminent if not corrected in a timely manner. If the situation was not a direct cause of poor maintenance or neglect and steps were taken to prevent, alleviate and or correct the situation, or the resources required to correct the situation were unavailable in the senior center's budget. Please note that the need to correct the situation must be supported by a subject matter expert form submitted along with the application. Applications must address the following issues: critical need, how the safety of the client served is endangered by the situation, urgency and why immediate action is necessary, project readiness, and the project must be realistic. Allowable project categories include plan and design, new construction, renovation, and code compliance. In the 2025 application, these four categories have been consolidated into one application. We have an application for meals or other equipment, and then we also have an application for vehicles. In the way of definitions, plan and design is a plan, blueprint, or drawing made to scale to show the look and function of or working of a building or other object before it is made. New construction is building a new structure. It's also increasing the square footage by more than 35% of its footprint. Demolishing or reconstructing more than 35% of the exterior walls or structural members of a building. So please note, if you intend to include demolition as part of the project cost, it must be documented so this activity can be included in the appropriation language. Renovation is defined as restoring a building to an earlier condition or repairing or remodeling. It's also making improvements to something already in existence. Please note that renovation of privately owned facilities is prohibited by the New Mexico Constitution. Privately owned is defined as facilities owned by private individuals, corporations, or other organizations, including nonprofit organizations and religious entities. Code compliance is defined as complying with regulations such as land use and zoning ordinances, health and housing codes, uniform building standards and fire codes, protecting the environment, or complying with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Please note, code compliance, renovation, and improvement project requests must be detailed and document the specific issues being addressed. Describe how the issue was identified and how the renovation will address the issue. The request must include documentation in support of the request, such as letters from the State Fire Marshal's Office, Environment Department of Health, Office of Environmental Health, or other oversight agencies. Definition for mills and other equipment is machinery or components and any other articles for use in preparing, cooking, and serving a meal. It can also be defined as machinery or components and any other equipment to make an action, operation, or activity easier. Please note, equipment must have a useful life of at least 7 to 10 years and be valued at $10,000 or more. Do not include consumable supplies or other non-capital items such as pots, pans, utensils, or trays. Vehicles. These would be vehicles for transporting people or goods for the operation of the senior center. 50% of the vehicles in a fleet must be accessible for persons with disabilities. And then this category is also to replace vehicles that have met its useful life. Please note, vehicles must have over 100,000 miles and be more than 7 to 10 years old to replace them, or provide documentation that the vehicle is in serious disrepair or no longer meets the needs of the center. Okay, let's talk a little bit about preparation. What do I need to begin the process? The land or property for the facility should be already acquired and owned by the local government to be eligible to proceed. A copy of the use and/or operating agreement must be valid if you're working with a nonprofit or for-profit provider for services. Asset inventory listings must be completed and submitted with the application. The Senior Facility Capital Improvement Plan, or ICIP 2025 through 2029, must be current and submitted with the application. You must also have certification and support from the local government or fiscal agent who will be administering the project. The next slide shows a preparation checklist. So, gather and complete the asset inventory listings. These forms are available on the website. Meet with your fiscal agent, council, and/or committee members to discuss the senior center needs and priorities. Create an application by visiting our website at the website that is noted on this slide. Contact subject matter experts to evaluate your projects and provide documentation in support of the need for the project. Gather quotes, cost estimates for the projects. Set up project team meetings and divide up the tasks. These applications are lengthy, and the more help you can get will result in a better application. Consider scheduling a visit with your AAA or Council of Government to review the application and give comments or notes for improvement. And then determine if this project is critical or if it can wait until the next application cycle. So a little bit more about who should be involved in the preparation of these applications. Consider establishing a project development team that could be comprised of the Senior Center Director, Facilities Manager, Fiscal Agent Management, and the community. Within that development team, present the needs and assess the priorities, determine if the project can be phased, and look for other funding sources, whether they be city, county, federal, etc. Another team you might consider establishing is a fact-finding team. This team would solicit professional guidance from, for example, from construction project managers who will serve as a subject matter expert. Organize and pull together cost estimates, develop your timelines. And then consider putting together an action team. This team would be comprised of the staff who will be responsible to prepare and submit the application. And It's also the staff who may be responsible to prepare and update the asset management plans and the other required forms that must accompany your application. A little bit more about that project development team. They must consider the needs. What are the needs, and are they critical in nature? And what is the effect on the client served? The team must determine the urgency of the project, and that could be done by looking at those asset management listings, and those listings must identify a critical need. If it's a code compliance issue, it must be stated on that asset management plan that the issue is critical and needs attention. Also consider whether or not the fiscal agent can pay for the project. Grant funds are reimbursed after expended by the fiscal agent. So there must be sufficient cash flow to pay the bills and then get reimbursed by the state for the grant. And then also consider, are there operation and maintenance funds available to operate the expansion or improve space? Many times we see facilities expand their spaces, but then they don't have enough budget to hire staff to operate and maintain the new expansions. And then finally, is it a large-scale major project, or can it be phased? And can the project meet the obligation requirements as required by the State Board of Finance? What this means is, if you receive severance tax bond funding for a project, before the agency can certify for the needs of the severance tax bond proceeds, the project must be developed sufficiently so that the agency responsibly expects to incur within 6 months after the applicable bond proceeds are available for the project a substantial binding obligation to a third party to expend at least 5% of the bond proceeds for the project. And then you must also be able to verify that at least 85% of the bond proceeds will be obligated within 3 years, or excuse me, they will be expended after 3 years after the applicable bond sale. For GOB funded projects, you must spend at least 85% of the bond proceeds within 18 months. Let's talk a little bit about that fact-finding team. This team could be organized to solicit professional opinions from facilities management staff, construction project managers, or contractors. So if it's a roofing project, you want to make sure that subject matter expert has expertise in roofing. If it's a construction project, you want to make sure that construction project manager has substantial expertise to submit a subject matter expert form to verify the critical need for your project. This team can also help you determine preliminary cost estimates. We suggest that you obtain cost proposals or estimates from one or more professionals. It's better to get a couple of bids to compare each other with. And then this team could also develop the timeline. In your application, you must develop a realistic timeline. Determine if the project needs to be phased. If it is phased, it must be phased in such a way that a working phase of the overall project is completed at the end of that grant period. And finally, your action team. This team will identify the lead person who will be responsible for completing the application, whether it's your mayor, finance director, grants writer, administrator, senior center director, etc. A lead person must be identified and responsible for submitting that application on time. How much time should we dedicate to this project? Well, it takes at least 2 to 3 months, maybe more, to plan a project of this magnitude. Schedule professionals at the start of your project planning sessions, and then hold routine meetings to assure completion by the application deadline. And then also, what do you expect after you submit your application? Do you call the agency or do you notify us? This next slide is the timeline. Applications will be due May 15th, 2024 by 5 p.m. The project review team will begin application review mid-May. Capital Projects Bureau will then submit the recommendation to the ALTSD Cabinet Secretary by June 17. ALTSD will submit final recommendations of its agency ICIP to the Department of Finance and Administration by the July 1st deadline. And then in October and November, DFA and the Legislative Finance Council hold capital outlay hearings to consider the recommendation for the department and even consider the individual requests contained in the recommendation. So if successful, a bill will be passed during the 2025 legislative session, and projects that were recommended the funding will be available in July 2025. Let's talk about the application components. So each application should contain the applicant contact information, and this should be the person completing the application who has knowledge of the project and the facility. There is a checkbox on this basic application page that you must check if the local government does not wish to submit a 2025 application. Get it signed by your authorizing official and submit it. This basic application contact form also has checkboxes for the Executive Order 2013-006 compliance, where you will be certifying that the fiscal agent has a current annual audit, that the fiscal agent has an approved annual budget from DFA, Local Government Division, and that the fiscal agent must be compliant with the submission of quarterly financial reports. This page also allows you to upload your Senior Facility Infrastructure Capital Improvement Plan, the ICIP, for 2025 to 2029. This is a mandatory document that must accompany each application. And then there's also an area where the fiscal agent's chief elected official or designee must certify that they support the project. This year we also included a upload box where you can upload a memo or letter signed by your official in case that he or she is not able to sign the actual application. Other elements of the basic application, and these are all components used by ALTSD and the project review team to gather important information about facility. There are questions about ownership of the facility, condition and age of the facility, uses, size, location, and days of operation. It asks what types and number of participants for each service are provided. It also has questions about operations, maintenance, and staffing requirements. And then also you must document repairs to the facility in the past 5 years and the funding sources. And then all other pertinent information that would provide insight as to the current and future capital outlay needs of the facility. Other components of the application include: number 1, the design, new construction, renovation, code compliance application. Number 2, the mills and other equipment application. And number 3, the vehicles application. In each of these applications, there are questions, 7 questions that you must respond to give a full explanation of your project. In the project summary, be sure to include the amount of funding requested, describe your project goals and how the goals will be measured, describe what improved services will be delivered as a result of the project, provide evidence that the problem exists and how the proposed project will contribute to the solution, and describe the outcome of not receiving these funds. This project summary narrative is a very important section of your application. This is your opportunity to fully explain what your needs are for the project and why it must be funded. There is a health and safety section, a section that asks about project readiness. There is a section called energy efficiency and sustainability. You'll see a little I in parentheses when you fill out that question, and it will provide information regarding the Executive Order of 2019-003, which addresses climate change and energy waste prevention. It was signed by the governor into law and provides directives to state agencies to evaluate the impacts of climate change. ALTSD has chosen to incorporate pieces of this executive order into our application process. There's a section about your project budget, project oversight, and project timeline. Please answer all of the questions. Don't leave anything blank. Required forms for your application. Again, you must provide a certification signed by the chief official of your local government or his designee. The asset management forms for facilities and fixtures, meals and other equipment, and vehicles must also be uploaded to the application. The project evaluation form signed by the subject matter expert must be included. Quotes or cost estimates are also required. If you have a schematic design for a construction or renovation project, please upload that. That always helps to demonstrate that your project is ready to go, and the reviewers will be convinced that you've done some planning for your project. Please provide operating and use agreements for local governments working with nonprofits. And then again, the infrastructure capital improvement plan is a requirement. This next slide, this is the asset management form. As you can see, this is the form for meals equipment and other equipment where you itemize the equipment that is in your facility, document the purchase date, purchase amount, other information, and document the condition of your equipment. And if there is a safety issue, talk about it, and if replacement is recommended, you can talk about it in that comments field. The same goes for the next form, the vehicle condition inspection checklist. Provide space for each of the vehicles held in your fleet, and you have an opportunity to document information about that vehicle and the condition of the vehicle and whether or not replacement is necessary. The third form is the facility condition inspection checklist. Again, this allows you to insert the names of the various spaces around your facility and document the condition of those spaces. You will also describe if correction action is needed or whether it's in good condition or no findings. So please make sure those forms are updated. This next form is the project evaluation form. It's statements provided by your subject matter expert as to the critical need of your project. This form can be found on the website. The subject matter expert must answer the questions on the form and then provide their name and contact information at the bottom of the form. This is a sample of the Infrastructure Capital Improvement Plan for 2025 through 2029. At the bottom of this slide is where you can find your ICIP. As you can see from this submission, this provider shows that replacing doors is their #1 priority for this time period, 2025 through 2029. Second priority, install energy efficient windows, so on and so forth. By participating in the ICIP process, it is showing that the local government, the senior center, is planning ahead for critical infrastructure projects needed for the future. The next slide talks a little bit more about the executive order and agency responsibilities. We already talked about how you will certify on the first page of your application compliance in the executive order. And this slide is just a little bit about what the ALTSD staff must do to review the fiscal agent's ability to carry out the grant. And all of this must be addressed before the agency will move to the intergovernmental grant agreement process. This next slide, again, we're presenting the website address. New to the application, we have a enhanced function for a print button so that you can print your application and keep it on file once it's submitted. We talked about the upload for the memo or letter signed by the official stating that they authorize the application submittal. In all sections, wherever you see an asterisk, these questions must be answered or the system will not allow you to submit the application. How to access the database. Next slide. When you try to access the database, go directly to request access, and then it will give you the second box that you see in this slide. Fill out that box and then select access. The system will then send you an email with a link so that you can click on the link, set your password, and after that you will have access to the application. Once you get into the application, you will see the first line which says current application. Select new application to begin your application and select the project categories that you are applying for. The slide has a column on the right side that has the applicant contact information. As you can see, there are asterisks on questions that are required. If any of these are left blank, you will not be able to submit this application. And then finally, always save. Hit the save button before closing out each section of the application. If the section is complete, You will check the checkbox indicating that, save it, and generate your application. This next slide is a snippet of the Design New Construction Renovation Code Compliance form. You can see the line that asks for the project summary and narrative. I already read to you what you need to respond to. Please take into account each of these questions. Tell your story in the box that is provided. Also, there's a field for the amount of your request, and then questions about will plan and design be required for this project. Please describe it in detail. Let us know what your need is. This next slide is a repeat of slide 19. I put it in here again just to re-emphasize the May 15th, 2024 deadline by 5 o'clock. Ensuring a good application. Please make sure all questions are addressed. Don't leave any blanks. Give an N/A or provide some type of justification at a minimum. Don't leave any of those questions blank. Detail all pertinent information relating to the critical need and/or urgency of the project. Include any details to document past efforts on the applicant's part made towards the project. Provide a detailed project description and background that documents the milestones and anticipated commencement and end date as justification to assist us in determining the critical need of the project. And provide that supporting documentation, those quotes, bids, plans, specs, cost estimates, letters of support, ownership, match, or leverage documents. Again, things to consider. What is the need? Is it critical? Can you justify this project? Is the facility code compliant? Does the equipment meet safety standards? Is the facility or equipment in disrepair, non-operable, or require extensive repair? Is the facility or equipment not functional for the needs of the seniors? Is it an urgent issue or risk to the seniors? Has the project been supported by a subject matter expert? Is there a plan for operating and maintenance? Do you conduct routine maintenance? Do you have support from the community and governing body? Are you able to provide a detailed project description? Will the item have a useful life of 7 to 10 years? And have you sought out other funding sources? A little bit about projects that are funded. If you're successful in getting funding, you will receive a project questionnaire from the State Board of Finance. Complete it and submit it timely. The bonds will be sold about a month later. Typically, the bond sales occur in the spring and fall of each year. Once the bonds are sold, DFA will prepare budgets and notify the agency when they are complete. The agency will then review compliance requirements with the Executive Order 2013-006, and then ALTSD will prepare a Notice of Grant Award requesting compliance with special conditions if that is applicable, and we will also request a scope of work. Upon receipt of the scope of work, ALTSD will review the documentation and then initiate the intergovernmental grant agreement. The scoring criteria. Again, here are the 7 different criterion that have been established in each of the applications, and each application will have a possible point of 100 points. 20 points for the narrative, summary, and background, 20 for the health and safety category, 10 points for project readiness, 10 points for energy efficiency and sustainability, 10 points for the project budget, 10 points for project oversight, and 20 points for project management. You want to make sure you fill out each of those sections of the application to your best of your ability so that you can get maximum points. If the application is deemed ineligible, these are some of the reasons why it may be deemed so. The application is not signed by the chief elected official, or perhaps the applicant did not provide mandatory forms, applicant did not provide mandatory quotes or cost estimates, applicant did not provide sufficient justification of the critical need of the project. Perhaps the project was not eligible for funding, or perhaps cannot comply with the New Mexico Constitution anti-donation clause. Or we've also seen that projects were funded in a prior year or duplicates, so they're deemed ineligible. Finally, a little bit about the 2024 capital outlay recommendation that was signed into law in the 2024 legislature. For the 2024 application process, we received 175 applications for funding by the May 31st deadline 2023. 62 applications were incomplete or duplicates or deemed ineligible. Therefore, 113 applications that were fully completed and considered totaled $41,088,500. Out of that 113 applications, 104 were recommended, totaling $29,801,893, which is 91% of the overall applications that were considered complete. 9 applications were not recommended. That totaled $9,460,801. Ultimately, the 2024 legislative session approved 98 GOB projects totaling $30,436,000, and 16 general fund projects were recommended or funded totaling $4,350,883, and this includes $1 million for emergency grants that will be available in 2024. That concludes the presentation. Here is our contact information. Please feel free to contact myself or Consuelo if you have any questions about this process. Thank you very much.